chibulangoma chenjiredzio nepenyure vanhu ndokwatinodzidzwa nhau dzacho kuchiridzwa mimanzi yacho DJ Proof ndatiwedzere mawatsi DJ Proof vaudze munhu wese kundovhota ngapinde mukomana ngapinde chamisa uyo achinge apinda corruption ichapera. We need to change, we want to grow, new Zimbabwe, new beginning. Change ratio nepenyure vanhu ndokwatinodzidzwa nhau dzacho kuchiridzwa mimanzi yacho DJ Proof ndatiwedzere mawatsi vari kuvamba vachitaura anzichenjireti yotenema vanoshambadza zvekunyema asi vanenge vachiisa kufumurwa upenyu hwakanaka tese tinohuda nyika yedu yakazara uchine mukaka ngatipeiwe chidiki uyungana ramangwana redu kuti rive rakajeka chenjiredzio nepenyure vanhu ndokwatinodzidzwa nhau dzacho kuchiridzwa mimanzi yacho DJ Proof ndatiwedzere mawatsi DJ Proof vaudze munhu wese kundovhota ngapinde mukomana ngapinde chamisa uyo achinge apinda corruption ichapera. We need to change, we want to grow, new Zimbabwe, new beginning. Change ratio nepenyure vanhu ndokwatinodzidzwa nhau dzacho kuchiridzwa mimanzi yacho DJ Proof ndatiwedzere mawatsi.
Good evening to all the corners of the world. We're here today, the second day in South African election, and the counting happening, results are streaking down, and people were standing still the whole day, and we're coming throughout the results were coming throughout the day, and we are at 35.7% now. And all the results are coming. They're promising that they'll be there the whole night. Like we promised yesterday that we have two guests today who will be talking to us about the South African. The best thing is that both guests are residents of South Africa, and they've been, watching and witnessing the results of the election happening in South Africa the whole time. So let me just, before we go into details about all this, let me give them the platform to introduce themselves. Maybe you can just introduce yourself to the people who you are and what are you doing maybe in South Africa, for example. Let me start with the consultant. Mr. Don, introduce yourself to the people.
Yes, thanks, Prof. How are you? Good evening to the viewers. My name is Don Madziva. I'm the consultant. I'm basically a consultant. I consult different industries from law to business, whatever it is that people may require of me to, to assist them with. So, yes. Thank you for bringing me on this platform, Prof, and your team. Let's hope we can do justice by discussing the current elections here in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Madziva. So, Mr. Madziva, he has done justice to himself. He's just a consultant, but he also has to mention that he's a political activist in his regard. So, thank you so much, Mr. Madziva.
Yeah.
And Prof.
Good evening to our viewers and fellow panelists. Prof. Mapendere, thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Professor Hlanai Masia. I am an academic by profession. I am a professor of public administration and management at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. Yes, I'm glad to be on the panel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. So obviously today, like we said, we are going to discuss the elections, the South African election that has just been done yesterday. And as we say that the results are trickling down and coming up. So maybe let me start by Professor Masia for let me just ask you maybe just to say, what was the environment of the political environment from yesterday, elections, and throughout today, the voting and the results are trickling down. What is the political environment or maybe the social environment around maybe where you are or around South Africa in general?
Yes, in South Africa in general, but also I had the opportunity to go around in Pretoria, a few polling stations, and I found the voting environment very peaceful, in fact, extremely peaceful. And an example of a typical flourishing democracy. I also noted that there were just so far, I only learned of 2 incidences where there were challenges with people trying to tamper with the ballots. But considering the vastness of the country, one can probably ascribe that to criminality more than an attempt to try and tamper with the election processes and the results processes as well. So I think Africa, Southern Africa, and our own country, Zimbabwe, has a lot to learn in terms of conducting peaceful elections in a manner in which South Africa has done in these current elections. And this is despite the pressure that the ANC is facing from emerging parties and the clear decrease in popularity that it is facing. It has not tried to manipulate, the electoral, environment. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Prof.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay.
Oh,
So
yes,
I was saying,
yes.
thank you so much, Professor Masia, for articulating or giving us insight of the environment in South Africa. What comes out from your points is that the democracy in terms of elections happening in South Africa, and you mentioned that other countries, SADC in particular, and in Africa in general must learn from the South Africa or from the IEC of South Africa and how they handle election because of the few or even a minimal incidence of malpractices, if I can put it that way. Mr. Madziva, you heard
Yes,
that
Prof.
the democracy of election in South Africa, IEC had shown how the elections must be done. Now,
Could be done, yes.
and Professor Masia mentioned about Zimbabwe learning. What do you think you as Zimbabwean, and what do you think Zimbabwe as a country must learn from what had transpired in South Africa?
Okay, thank you, Prof. Professor Masia actually said something interesting. Regardless of the pressure that the ANC is facing right now, I actually respect them for making the environment so conducive for everyone to compete without fear or favor, like we see in Zimbabwe. Hopefully ZEC can learn, and hopefully ZANU-PF too can learn, and our future generations must take a lesson from the ANC on this issue. It's very commendable. It's so rare to see one of these, say, old school parties participating and allowing others to participate, especially when they are under pressure. We have seen things in Zimbabwe that would scare anyone who would want to compete as a politician or anything along those lines. So yes, I totally agree on that. We should give kudos to the ANC for being who they are, as in allowing everyone to exercise their rights. We saw what transpired in Zimbabwe in August last year, 2023, when we got like ballot material midnight in some areas. That was like, say, 12 to 24 hours after the election was supposed to be done. So this is one of those things that I think our leaders back in Zim should take a cue from the ANC. For once, they must learn something from our South African counterparts. Yes.
But on that note, Baba Maziwa, I'm coming back to you, Mr.
Yeah.
Maziwa. On that note,
Yes.
You heard the rumors, or social media was awash with the fact that ANC is taking the election or is taking it on a ZANU-PF way. What's your comment on that?
Unfortunately, that's just a rumor, man. We can't. I don't think we should involve ourselves in such things. At least for now, let's just give it time until all the results are in. Then we can see if there was an element of ZEC, ZEC and ZANU-PF. They give a bad impression, man, on anyone who is associated with them. So yeah, I think the ANC should learn something, like, from that situation. They try to involve themselves with ZANU-PF. That's what happens. You lose credibility. If you deal with a thief, people are going to assume that you are also trying to be a thief. It's inevitable.
Okay, Prof. Masia, what's your comment on the issue that people are exemplifying the things that ANC was doing to what ZANU-PF, and they even went further to say that the ANC has sent a delegation to Zimbabwe to learn on the rigging tactic. And we heard also Julius Malema yesterday was saying they are already starting what he tells that they would want to rig election, and he's giving an example to say, from the look of things, it seems like they want to have this election overnight. And as you heard from IEC, they were saying that the last person who voted, they voted around 3 a.m. What do you think about that? You're on mute, Prof. Masia. Yes.
Yes. I think starting with your last observation that the last person voted at 3 a.m. Electoral rules are that if you are in the queue by the time of closing, which is normally 9 p.m., you are supposed to be served. And generally, queues became longer and longer towards the evening. So in that context, therefore, it was inevitable that by the by the closing time at 9 p.m., the queues will still be much longer. And the political parties themselves were actually active in terms of mobilizing and seeing to it that their supporters get to the polling stations. So it also speaks to the fact that it's been recorded that the voting turnout at this time is much higher than it was in 2019. So obviously more people, higher numbers came to vote. And in terms of whether or not the ANC was trying to draw some lessons from ZANU-PF, well, there is no evidence in terms of it going to ZANU-PF to learn how to rig. But you know, they have that spirit of brotherhood that they have kept for so long among the liberation movements. And I think some of this cooperation is in the context of that solidarity between them, rather than ANC are trying to manipulate the systems. In terms of other political parties or rivals of the ANC claiming that the ANC want to rig, I mean, those are preemptive statements that, you know, a rival might likely, you know, say. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there is concrete evidence that there has been an attempt to rig. I think the South African system is too transparent to use the mechanisms that are used in Zimbabwe. You know, Zimbabwe's election are opaque right from the body that runs the elections and also the law enforcement, you know, branches of the state. So, and here in South Africa, all those are independent and are exercising their responsibilities according to the constitution. So it can the playing field in Zimbabwe and in South Africa is vastly different, and they cannot use the same tactics. Yeah.
Right. For those who are just joining us, we are live on Change Radio in different platforms. We are live in more than 16 platforms, our YouTube channels, our Facebook channels, and our radio live, and Yuda Live, Majority, and Zim Live, and all those platforms that our brothers and sister platforms that we screen live. We are discussing about elections, South Africans' elections, in particular, where the South African went for watershed election yesterday, and today the results are trickling out, and we know that they are expected to, you know, to bring the final result before the lapsing of the 7 days. They've got 7 days to complete and give the final results to the people. Right, Mr. Mazio, ANC, the liberation movement, is one of the topic that is being said, that the liberation movement does not want to relinquish power easily. And we are seeing that as the result stands now, ANC at 35.7 votes counted is sitting at 43%. That's not looking good for a liberation movement and the movement that has been leading South Africa since independent 1994. What's your comment on
that? Thank you, Prof. You know, I always tell people about the situation of Africa as a whole when you want to look at these old political parties, the ones who gave us our freedom, so to speak. If you look from Ghana in 1957 up to until now here in South Africa, you can see that there is a trend there. I think complacency seems to set in on these liberators of ours, so to speak. They tend to you know, to take it easy, like they forget why they were fighting, like the colonialists. If you can look at how ZANU-PF has performed, say from 1980 when we got our independence in Zimbabwe, up to say the year 2000, that's the exact same trend you are seeing with the ANC from 1994 up to today. I think complacency seems to set in, and the comrades start to loot. You know, these people, they want to get rich, man. It seems like it's a disease that we have as Africans in this context. So no one is shocked. Anyone who has been following South Africa, say since the time of Nelson Mandela up to today, we all knew this was coming. In a way, we all knew this was coming. You can see what was happening during Jacob Zuma's era as the president of the ANC in South Africa. They had problems. They had what do you call it? Load shedding, corruption, and all these things. Eventually, people will see that these guys are fake in a way. They preach Pan-Africanism as much as they can, but then the reality of the situation is in the results. We can see how the situation is going down in South Africa. The rand is I think around over 20 or somewhere along those lines on the US dollar. You buy a loaf of bread for like 15, 16 rand now. In around 2007, when I got here, we would buy a loaf of bread for like, I think 5 rand or so. So that just shows you how much these guys are mismanaging the country. And I mean, no disrespect to the ANC. They've done a couple of good things. They've built houses. It's commendable on that end, but overall they are failing the people, and the people are getting smarter. I mean, our kids are going to school, and so eventually people will see that these guys are not good for business. And I'm actually shocked that the ANC is going to end up at around maybe 45%. That's my projection anyway, which is a surprise to me. After what I've seen, I would have thought the South Africans were going to boot them out. Like, on a more serious note, I was expecting it to be worse than this. So by their own standards, they are actually doing well. Trust me on that.
Okay. Viewers and listeners, feel free to comment, give us your views. Comment in all the platforms where you are watching us from, where you are listening us from. Just give us your comment with regards to the topic that we are discussing. Like I said, we are focusing on the South African election. Actually, this one I wanted to go to Professor Masia, because one of the commentators there, or one of the viewers, he said, Prof, it seems like they are pro ANC from what from what they're contributing. Prof Masia, you are being said that you are pro ANC, but anyway, you answer this in tandem with what I'm going to ask you now. ANC, like I said, it's I give this question to Mr. Mazau in terms of it being the the liberation movement, and it seems like it's not looking good from what they were from where they were last in 2019. It seems like now at this level they've dropped by 15% from where they were last in 2019 election. But my question now is more want to focus on the win or the lose of ANC. How is it going to impact across Limpopo in Zimbabwe? What is the impact of ANC losing or winning in the election to Zimbabwe as it stands, Dr. Masia?
All right, thank you. I'm not an ANC supporter. I'm just an analyst in the first place.
Yes.
But I'm just saying facts as they are. This is it's important to give credit to where it is due. It's true that they've been facing significant pressure, but they have, kept the playing field as level as possible. In terms of the ANC losing, well, statistically at this point, it doesn't seem like the ANC is going to lose the election, but it may lose the majority. So for me, losing the majority and losing the election are two different things. It might not get the 50% or +1 that it needs to govern alone. Then that means it might need to settle for other partners, one major partner or many other smaller partners, depending on how they perform, and also depending on the gap in terms of it reaching, getting the majority to form a government. But if you look at the current results as they come in of the top 4 political parties, you realize that 3 of them are having similar roots, a similar understanding of what South Africa's problem is and how it should be solved. I'm talking about the top four as in the ANC, the DA, MK, and EFF. If you look at MK, EFF, and the ANC, they probably have a similar vision of how they want to transform South Africa, albeit with some minor differences in terms of radicalism. But when it comes to the relationship with Zimbabwe, 3 of the 4 major parties are, assuming that either of them wins, they still have the ideological orientation that is rooted in the liberation struggle. And they believe that those who went to war are the brothers. So I'm simply saying, if EFF was to win, there is a very small chance that they will be maybe pro-opposition in Zimbabwe. They might not like Emerson Mnangagwa, but they still feel, sorry, ZANU is better than the opposition. So is also the MK. Remember, its name Umkhonto weSizwe is also rooted in the liberation struggle. And these are likely to be more sympathetic to ZANU-PF than to the opposition in Zimbabwe. So if the ANC was to form a coalition government and form it with together with the MK and the EFF, I do not see any major reorientation of the position of South Africa towards Zimbabwe. However, assuming that the unlikely happens, that the ANC comes into coalition with the Democratic Alliance, we might see some moderating factor there, because the DA doesn't have the same liberation credential and roots as ZANU-PF, and the DA and the opposition in Zimbabwe have been in the African alliance of opposition political parties, and therefore there is some commonalities there. So it means an ANC-DA alliance might be a moderating factor in terms of the South Africa's policy towards Zimbabwe. And we might see perhaps some limited understanding of the demands of the opposition in Zimbabwe. Otherwise, without the context of the DA, any of those 3 parties will likely maintain the same friendship that the ANC has with the Zimbabwean regime. That's how I see it.
Sure. Mr. Madziva, you wanted to comment?
Yes. On that particular issue, I actually agree with Professor Masia. There is nothing the opposition in Zimbabwe is going to get if, say, the ANC goes in bed with either the EFF or MK. There is nothing we will get from that, as far as I can see anyway. But I think a coalition with the DA, yes, that might actually help us in a way. That might actually work for us, because like Professor Masia said, DA doesn't really care so much for the brotherhood of these colonial fighters, so to speak. So yes, on that front, I think hopefully the ANC goes in bed with the DA. That might actually work in our favor as opposition in Zimbabwe. Otherwise, we are doomed as it is.
Okay. Now, EFF, as you can see the results now, it's on number 4. And it seems as if that if all goes like where it is now, EFF is going to decline the votes from what they got in 2019, where on the ground it seems like they've gained more popularity than before. Why I'm putting this disclaimer, I want to link it with the Zimbabwean situation. What can you say to the people who are in Zimbabwe, or to the Zimbabweans who always have these comments where they will try to exemplify the opposition in Zimbabwe with the EFF? For instance, to come and say, if Malema was in Zimbabwe, opposition would have taken over.
Prof, before you go on,
okay, what's your comment on that before I go further? Yes.
If Malema was in Zimbabwe, ZANU-PF would be mooring him the same way they do everyone in opposition. Listen, the situation in Zimbabwe is very different from the South African situation. People need to understand that. Yes, I understand why people need to compare things. It's inevitable. People are going to compare things. But now, when you put in the facts, put in the numbers, the statistics, you can still see that, say, the opposition in Zimbabwe, the genuine opposition anyway, is way far ahead of all these opposition parties in South Africa. Just look at the numbers. The numbers will tell you that the opposition in Zimbabwe is popular as they come. Comparing it with the EFF, that's just people trying to cause problems where they ain't. And I'm actually surprised by how the EFF is performing. I was hoping that since they celebrated their 10-year anniversary, they would be doing good. But I think the EFF has this problem of depending on the youths. I don't think the youths vote that much. You know, we could talk about the kids in say varsity colleges and stuff. Yes, you can actually convince those guys to vote, but the youth on the streets, they don't vote that much. Man, I think that's basically an African problem. And even for us as opposition in Zimbabwe, if we can manage to get that many youths to vote, then our numbers will even go higher than we are currently experiencing now. But as you can see, the EFF is struggling, man. I didn't expect this from them. But then it comes back to their target voters. They are mostly looking at the youth. And the youth are not that loyal, man. Half the time, okay, like yesterday when I was driving around, going around polling stations and stuff, I noticed, yes, there were people there, but most of the people that I saw were mostly elderly people. But that's because, probably because some of the youths had gone to work the better part of the day, and when they came back, they just decided to leave it, man. So we, as opposition in Zimbabwe, I think we need to take note of that. We need to find ways to convince the youth to vote. Being on Twitter, X now, being on X and Facebook and stuff, commenting on opposition issues, that's not the solution. We need to be practical about this situation. You know, I think, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, one of these EFF guys was on X conducting some a poll on there, trying to gauge how many votes they would get. The EFF won hands down, but in reality now that's a whole different kind of thing. So I think that's one of those things that we need to work on as opposition in Zimbabwe. We really need to be careful when it comes to the youth. Let's find ways to convince them to vote. Yes, they can support you in mind. They can support us on the internet and stuff like that. You can discuss with them like on the streets. Yes, they are pro-EFF, but then for you to be pro-EFF in a meaningful way, you need to translate that to vote. Go and vote. So that's the message I think we also need to say to our youths as opposition in Zimbabwe, we need to find a way to coerce them to go and put their votes where it matters most.
Full of wisdom from Mr. Madziva. Thank you so much. For those who are listening to us, please don't forget to comment, give us your views, give us your comments so that we can read it out. If you have any question, just contribute so that we can be able to hear these two experts. Like I said, they are residents of South Africa and they've been, involved one way or the other in the elections that took place yesterday. And now we are sitting on our benches, following the results coming through, and we'll be giving you each and every day what is happening until the final day of the election result in South Africa as Change Radio. Prof. Masia, I'm gonna come to you with regards to EFF. I'm very tied with EFF scenario now because they resemble Pan-Africanism and they pro black people, and the majority of black of South Africans, they say they are black people. And is it that this Pan-Africanism ideology is not getting into black people, or rather EFF itself as a political party is going extreme? What do you think?
Yeah, maybe that question makes an addition to what Mr. Madziva has already indicated. The EFF is not performing as well as one would expect given the noise that they make. But I always say stadium numbers are not voting numbers. That's what people must understand. You can fill a stadium, but that doesn't translate to votes, first. Second, the youth phenomenon, it's a more youthful movement. It's more of a youth movement, and the youth do not seem to understand the essence of voting. And this doesn't happen only in South Africa, but in many other countries as well. Even in developed democracies like in the United States, there is that problem where the youth do not exercise their democratic right to vote. And it's only older people who vote. So if you are a movement that is based on the youth, you are likely to lose out when it comes to voting. The point of Pan-Africanism as being a trump card for the EFF, this is a good position at the international level, not at the local country level. Why? Because the South African society is struggling with containing immigration. And the view is that the immigrants are actually taking jobs from them. So in that context, therefore, the concept of Pan-Africanism cannot be attractive to them, first. And second, the challenges that the South Africans are facing today have nothing to do with Pan-African brotherhood. They are facing, corruption scandals. They are facing a declining economy, high unemployment, poverty, infrastructure crumbling, like the ESCOM thing and all that. These are the everyday challenges that the South Africans are facing. And if a party is not speaking to these challenges and speaks of Pan-African brotherhood, it means then it is divorced from the everyday challenges of the South Africans that will influence voting patterns. So I think in that context, therefore, the concept of Pan-Africanism is not attractive to a South African who is facing challenges in terms of what to put on the table, to eat every day. And also, that Pan-Africanism does not only distance the EFF from the ordinary citizens in the village and in the township, but it also means that the EFF itself has, in terms of the country itself, has this radical economic transformation concept, which is probably is deemed too radical and potentially destructive to the economy. So the radicalism and Pan-Africanism all seem to be contributing negatively to the electoral votes for the Economic Freedom Fighters political party.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masia, for that eloquent contribution to that. I still keep on to say, for those one who are still joining us, we are discussing South African elections. In the studio with me is two guests, residents of South Africa, who have witnessed the start and the finish of the election yesterday, and now also they are witnessing the counting and the presentation of results, and we are discussing each and every, maybe if I put the word, relevant political parties that are, we think that could have changed the trajectory of political situation in South Africa. Mr. Madziva, DA.
Yes, bro. Yes.
A white political party, or is a white political party a fallacy or a fact?
Okay. Thanks, Prof. The situation of the DA is a bit tricky. I was thinking the Patriotic Alliance, that Gayton McKenzie party, was going to chip off votes from the DA, but for some weird
reason, it actually did.
It actually
did. It's number 5. It's number 5 now.
It's number 5. No, I'm saying, in the context of the Western Cape, I was thinking the DA is going to decline big time, considering the votes that the Patriotic Alliance is going for are the exact same votes that the DA normally takes. But for some weird reason, it seems like the DA is not doing so bad. So in a way, I can't help but feel that the Patriotic Alliance here in the Western Cape and other areas is chipping off mostly votes that were supposed to go to the EFF in a way. And while the MK Umkhonto weSizwe, Jacob Zuma's party, is also doing the same, because I was looking at KZN, I don't see the EFF in the top 3 there, which is very worrying, man. If you ask me, it's very worrying. I'm surprised, and it seems like the DA is doing arguably well in KZN as well, and in Gauteng and surrounding areas. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, let's just wait for the final results and see how the DA performs. But they seem to have done well, and I understand there is this perception that the DA is a white party, and it's probably going to bring back apartheid if they win and stuff like that. But as a resident of the Western Cape, I know there is problems of service delivery across the board. But as far as I can see, the DA seems to do way better than their counterparts in all the other provinces as far as service delivery is concerned, which is why they probably keep on getting votes, especially here in the Western Cape. Most people would assume that the majority of the people voting for the DA are white people. That's not true. That's not true. They have a stronghold in most colored areas, and they have the black vote as well. It's probably because the people understand that while they are not perfect, they seem to be doing way better compared to the ANC. You know, so I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing now. I with what has happened to the DA in the past years, like the Musima Imane situation, and what's that other guy's name? I keep forgetting the other guy's name. We were thinking the DA is going to lose outright, like especially on the black vote and the colored vote. So I'm actually impressed with how they are doing. It seems like their message seems to resonate with the people. So if people trust them that much, then I don't know, maybe we should really give them a chance, because they have done, we can't say they have done well in the Western Cape, but as far as I can see, compared to other provinces, they seem to be doing way better. So yeah, it's one of those things, Prof.
Okay, our time is running out now, but before before we end, I would want to know, I would ask you about your predictions. But for now, let me go to Professor Masia and maybe just to check with you about the possibilities. I think you just touched in past, but what are the possibilities of coalition government? And if there are possibility of a coalition government, who do you think might coalesce or might have a coalition? Talk less of DA that is already into coalitions with PA, into IFP, with BOSA and other things. What do you think, and how do you think the coalition might go?
Yes, you know, politics is a game of interests. So, being a game of interests, some of the coalitions that may emerge might shock you.
Definitely.
I want to draw you to the issue of coalitions at local government level. We have had actually the DA going into coalition with the EFF, for example, to rule a metropolitan municipality, Johannesburg, for example. We have seen in other cases where the the ANC has also gone into coalition with unlikely partners. It's a game of political interests. So for me, I think who will partner the ANC if that requirement comes is not easy to predict. It will be determined by the kind of policy trajectory that the ANC wants to take. Does it want to become more radical in the next 5 years? If it does so, then it might look to the EFF for a partner, right? Does it want to maintain a business-friendly environment? Then it might look to the DA as a partner. So, but also the permutation will depend on whether that whole conglomerate of small parties, whether that can help the ANC to get to the majority. If it enables, if the smallest parties have the numbers that can help the ANC get past the 50% plus one mark, the chances are that it might try to bring all those together and avoid these more difficult parties. The EFF is really anxious to go into the coalition, not because it loves the ANC, but because it wants to play the role of a spoiler. Remember, even before the election, EFF Malema came out saying, yeah, if you can give the position of finance minister to us and that, we would give you the votes. So EFF is also anxious to be a partner of the ANC, but to play a role of a spoiler. The DA also thinks it can rein on some of the radical transformation policies that the ANC has been espousing, especially, for example, policies around the minimum wage, policies around land reform, and the like. So they will also be anxious to go in with the ANC there. I'm not sure much about the MK. Because the MK story is very much different and is based on claims of victimization and hate. And I'm not sure if it can, if the ANC and the MK can go into a coalition. Yeah.
Mr. Matsiva, do you have a comment on that?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Prof. Personally, I would be interested to see a DA and ANC coalition. And this is strictly for the sake of South Africa as a nation. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how they work out the logistics on that. But
don't forget that DA is already in a coalition.
In a coalition. Yeah. If they get enough votes and those smaller parties get enough votes, they may not need to join the ANC, but then they know the consequences of not doing that. Because if they don't help the ANC get the majority, one way or the other, the ANC will be forced to either go the EFF route or the MK route, of which I don't think that's good for anyone. So if, like I've heard President Ramaphosa say, they are trying to renew the ANC and all that. My take is the only way they can actually realize that idea of renewing the ANC, if, say in this case, if they don't get the 50% they need, they will, if they say, okay, take it this way, if they join the DA, I think the business-wise, the DA can still convince investors to join the movement or to invest in South Africa. So that will actually help the ANC. And with DA in government, the stories of corruption may be nipped, to a certain extent, which will bring another problem for the ANC though. Because some of these comrades, I don't think they will want that idea of having the DA, looking at all the financial situations within the government. So it's a very tricky situation. But if people are looking at the idea of saving South Africa, the only way to go is the DA and ANC coalition. Like Professor Masia said, stranger things have happened before. And I'm sure we are about to witness some very strange things the next coming days, weeks, and the likes. Yeah.
For those ones who are just joining us, we were discussing the South African elections, and we are still discussing South African election. Only that the difference is you only come towards the end of the super, full of pregnant with a lot of information about the South African election and the possibilities, and how does this reflect to Africa and SADC in particular, in terms of how the election were held, the practice of elections. South Africa is always, and I think will remain always, a good example of on a number of things. Obviously, if you speak in terms of economic, the South Africans themselves, they will not agree with us, but they tried by all means to make sure that the country still stand and compared to other SADC or sub-Saharan African countries that are struggling even to hold their own economy regardless of an election. Or our time is lapsed now. Then I'm going to give each and every panelist just the time to give parting words and then give us your prediction of the final results. What do you think will be the final results? and give us parting words and the final or the prediction of the final results rather. Thank you. Let me start by Dr. Masia.
All right, thank you very much. I think what I can say that is much more important is that we have seen democracy at work in South Africa, and it is possible for Africans to be democratic if they want to. And we hope that Africa is taking a leaf out of this democratic process. And because of that, well, I wish South Africa the best for the next 5-year term, a fruitful 5-year term that is also exemplary in the context of a coalition government, coming into being. It is very unlikely that the ANC will exceed 45%, as we are seeing most of its votes have gone to the MK party. And in that context, definitely it will need a coalition. And of course, it's an election full of surprises. The EFF has also gone down. But well, we know the next 5 years will also not be short of drama, as long as they are still in there. They are a valuable cog in maintaining South Africa's democracy and checking on the excesses of government. So sometimes as an opposition, you might not be destined to rule, but you are playing a very critical role in the whole political system. Yeah, that's all what I can say.
Your prediction?
Well, as I said, statistically, the ANC is not likely to exceed 45%, and it will need a coalition.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Mazil.
Okay, yes. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk about is how the IEC has conducted these elections. I mean, there are problems everywhere, like, in life, but I actually applaud them for the way they've handled these elections. I urge ZEC to take a leaf out of their book and learn something, how to conduct elections without, making other people question the whole process as it is, like we've seen in Zimbabwe since 2000. As far as the percentages are concerned, okay, I'm putting the ANC at around 43-44%. I don't think they will get any better than that. And by the grace of God, I'm not sure if that's a good thing for South Africa, but the ANC should be thanking their ancestors or whatever it is that they believe in. Because considering how they've handled this country since Nelson Mandela left after his first term, it's dismal. It's dismal. Yes, they've done a couple of things that we can actually, be thankful for as people, but a whole, they could have done better if they were not into corruption and if they were not self-serving, so to speak. So yeah, in a way, I think they deserve everything that they are getting. But I'm also proud of them in the case that I think they knew, like everyone else, that they were not going to get that 50%, but they still conducted the elections with respect and dignity to the Constitution and to the people of South Africa. That's something that I'm really surprised to see as of now. So let's wait to see, like, when all the results are in, and then we can see from there. But yeah, I think they done well in conducting the elections. That's actually something that most African leaders should learn. We tend to have that thing of seeing these old guys not wanting to leave power, and it's sad. It's sad. But yeah, the ANC has done well in handling this situation, in handling this defeat, so to speak. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Professor Masia and Mr. Madziva, for your time. I know it was a very short notice, but you managed to come and give your views and about this election of South Africa to our viewers and listeners. And thank you again goes to our viewers and listeners in all our platforms where we are, and our YouTube channel, our X, our Facebook. Our Twitter, so that's X. Okay, obviously that's X. My encouragement is for you just to follow us in all those platforms, and we are Change Radio. We are Change Radio everywhere. Just type Change Radio. You obviously find us, and on behalf of Change Radio and all the technical department that has been holding this machine for us, will bring you again new guests tomorrow. We're having 2 more new guests that will be broadcasting again live, talking about the South African election as well. Until Saturday, we'll be giving you the final result. But don't forget, yesterday we told you that on Saturday it will be a big one. We have one of our well-known economists in Zimbabwe will be discussing about the election, and also we'll be discussing about the money, the new current that has been I don't think it's the new current, it's still new old current that has been produced in Zimbabwe, the ZiG. So we'll be speaking to us on the same platform. So don't forget to subscribe and follow us in all the platforms that you are. And it's bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Kuchiridzwa mimanzi yacho DJ Proof ndati wedzere mawadzi.